Shadow Minister of Manpower.
Mr. Speaker, sir, before we get awestruck by the technical brilliance and creative craftsmanship of this bill, let us first take a look at the bill part by part. For example, with regards to education under tertiary education, the absence of more universities offering arts and humanities courses is blinding. Why are there no such opportunities locally given? There is a great increase in students interested in courses like psychology or social sciences. Apart from SMU and NUS, more should be done to increase such opportunities locally. Perhaps one contentious issue would also be the influx of foreigners into Singapore and the pros and cons of such an exodus. Just like what the Minister of Foreign Affairs had mentioned, in these times of uncertainty, any wrong move might just tilt the seesaw the wrong way. Would we want another disaster like the dot-com bust or a riot like the 1980s? That can happen if we allow it to. We need to keep our focus on maintaining the core principle of equality even as we step into the throes of dark times. As our nation progresses, no one should be left behind. No one. And that should be our focus today. I urge the House not to promote numbers and statistics and turn this into an ego-boosting session for the ruling government. As politicians, we have to look at each clause and decide on its cons and pros. Today, we should focus on both the availability of opportunities and equality of our nation. Thank you.
Yes.
Can the member from Changi or the Shadow Minister of Manpower please specify the clauses which he is referring to?
Shadow Minister of Manpower, you are entitled to do so.
Okay, I believe that I've mentioned this before, but if you want me to go over again, sure, no problem. As I said before, it is under education, tertiary education. Please look carefully next time. Thank you.
Are there any members wishing to speak? Yes, the independent member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I would like to recommend an amendment to the bill. The Minister of Education has acknowledged earlier on between a division between the elite and neighborhood schools and has called for a movement to break down the walls of elitism among students. Now, that is certainly heartening to hear, and I express my full support behind this. The Minister of Education has also claimed that this academic discrepancy has occurred because, and I paraphrase, freedom of opportunity does not translate into freedom of outcome, and therefore she has called for more policies to be in place to establish a stronger teaching force to bridge that academic gap. Members of the House, I say that unfortunately, we can do more to establish that freedom of opportunity that the Minister of Education has spoken of. Neighborhood schools, for instance, they possess less faculties, they are poorer, they are smaller than elite schools such as Raffles Institutions and Dunman High. Therefore, compared to elite schools, neighborhood schools will always be one step behind because they don't have the financial resources to invest in better teaching facilities or CCA training. The proportion of money allocated to neighborhood schools is different compared to the money allocated to elite schools. Therefore, to add on to what the Minister of Education has said, I would like to recommend a double-pronged approach of improving both the quality of the teaching force as well as the faculties of neighborhood schools in lieu with the government's effort to break down the walls of academic elitism in Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any members wishing to speak? I believe the Minister of State of the Ministry of National Development. You're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, sir, members of the House, I am Ong Yu Xiang from Simei constituency, and I am the Minister of State for National Development. In response to what the Member of Parliament, the independent Member of Parliament before me has spoken, I would like to clarify that we in Singapore do not differentiate between schools as neighborhood or as elite. And for a point of information, what the school, the elite school that the member has mentioned just now, was Raffles Institution, which is an independent school. Independent schools are largely, as they say, independent of government funding. The funding mostly comes from the school advisory committee or other organizations such as businesses or trade unions. Now, this house understands that these neighborhood schools, as we call government-aided schools, actually receive much more funding and many more resources from the government, and more specifically from the Ministry of Education. And that is why we need this supply bill. This is why this supply bill is crucial for us, for the government to continue providing for the children of our country, for us to continue providing for the future of our nation. And therefore, I beseech all members of the House to vote in favor of this supply bill, not just for the present, but also for the future of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any members wishing to speak? Shadow Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'd like to draw the House's attention to Clause 6.5, which is the funding to self-help groups, which was covered previously by the Leader of the Opposition. Now, the Opposition will not let this case rest. The Minister for Community, Youth and Sports is being paid an obscenely large salary, and therefore should understand the principles on which our society is built: multiracialism and multiculturalism. Ladies and gentlemen, honourable members, the Opposition believes that funding should not be allocated to such self-help groups, but rather as an advisory, play an advisor role, following which the Ministry will actually disperse the funds itself. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Are there any members wishing to speak? Minister of State of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I would like to speak on behalf of the government that this supply bill has been very well crafted. It covers every single point that Singapore will need for a better future ahead. It has covered all the necessary details, and it will allow us to avoid the problems that we see in other countries, such as in Europe with its European debt crisis, in the US, and in many other nations. And it will allow Singapore to stand as a model that others may be able to follow. And therefore, I thank the Minister of Finance and his team and all the other members of government for writing this bill. Right now, as the Minister of State for Home Affairs, I shall look into detail in the Home Affairs section of the bill. Firstly, it is a fact that society is globalizing day by day. We acknowledge that fact, and we are a global city. We are in the crossroads of the world. We are between many growing nations such as China, India, the US, and others. Given our central position in regards to international trade, it opens up new possibilities, but it must be known that not only law-abiding people understand that fact. Criminals also understand the fact that we are a very convenient place to do business as well. Closer to home, we lie near the Golden Triangle of the poppy-growing nations in Indochina, and that is something we always have to take note of. Internationally, we are seeing more cases of fraud, white-collar crime, and other such issues that we must tackle in a swift and efficient manner. Therefore, we would like to thank the Finance Minister for making sure that the white-collar crimes section of the Singapore Police Force is enlarged, given more funding so that it can respond to such crimes in an efficient manner. And we would also like to encourage all members of this House, government, independent, opposition, all of us must vote for this bill. We must act as responsible members of the global community, and we must do our part to stop global crime. Thank you.
At this point, the Speaker would like to make a suggestion. I'll take one last member to make his or her comment regarding the supply bill, following which we will suspend the session for 5 minutes for a short break. I believe all you all need a break by now, because I need one too. Right, the last speaker before we suspend this session for a break would be Mr. Sebastian Poh.
Mr. Speaker, I'm Mr. Sebastian Poh, representative of Tampines East. Throughout this hearing, I've heard many issues and wonders about the SHG self-help groups. Before I move on to this topic, I would like us to remind ourselves of the purpose of this self-help group in the first place. Basically, these self-help groups is to ensure every racial segment of Singapore society has an equal representation such that every group has equal power. If these self-help groups are not present, in that case, we will be left to our own discretion. In such a case, we cannot neglect the fact that without these self-help groups, there will still be some racial segregation. In that case, what will the majority do is that they will have the upper hand against the minorities. Look at this parliament. How many people are actually from the minorities? Not much. So with the self-help groups in place, it actually places enough power to these minority races such that they have enough funds and enough resources to actually help their various groups independently, regardless of the demographics of the Singapore society. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Member for his speech. At this point, because we are about to touch on pretty sensitive issues that are race and religion, I will implore all members to be careful with what they say and not make any remarks that might be construed as derogatory to any of our minority friends. But that being said, I acknowledge the comment made by the Honourable Member, and we shall now move to a 5-minute suspension of the session.